Rain lashed against the cliffside, turning the narrow paths slick and dangerous. Kale clutched his satchel of tools, struggling to keep his footing as he made his way toward the top. The storm was relentless, wind whipping around him and thunder shaking the rocks beneath his boots. He had been searching for shelter, hoping to avoid getting drenched and losing any of his equipment. Instead, he stumbled upon something far more urgent: a dragon nest perched precariously near the cliff's edge. The nest was massive, built from jagged rocks, branches, and mud. Rainwater pooled inside, soaking the eggs that lay within. A large dragon, scales glistening dark blue with streaks of silver, hovered protectively over her young. She snapped her jaws at the heavy drops and shifted her body, trying to shield the eggs. Kale froze for a moment. He had seen dragons in stories, in simulations, but never in person. And never in such a fragile state. The dragon's eyes met his. There was fear but also a desperate plea. She had no way to stop the water. Kale swallowed hard, realizing he could not just leave. He set down his satchel and ran over to the nest as safely as he could. Rain pounded down on him, soaking his clothes and making the rocks slippery, but he ignored the cold. He examined the nest quickly, noting where the water seeped in most fiercely. The dragon watched closely, tense and alert. Kale grabbed a few large leaves and pieces of debris from the edge of the cliff and began forming a barrier along the side of the nest where the rainwater was pouring in. The mother dragon growled softly, low and wary, keeping a watchful eye on him. Every movement had to be careful or she would attack instinctively. Kale worked slowly, carefully arranging the leaves, rocks, and mud to block the worst of the water. A sudden gust of wind knocked him sideways, sending him sliding toward the edge. The dragon snapped her jaws, wings flaring, and he froze. But instead of attacking, she guided him with her body. She shifted, blocking the worst of the fall, her tail brushing against the wet rocks. Kale steadied himself, heart racing, and continued working. For the first time he realized that they were communicating, not with words but through understanding and instinct. Hours seemed to pass in minutes as Kale worked to divert the water. He found old branches from nearby trees, wedging them strategically to channel the rain away from the eggs. The mother dragon moved carefully, adjusting her position to shield areas he could not reach. Occasionally she nudged a rock with her snout, helping him seal gaps. Kale began to sense a rhythm, a silent collaboration. They were a team and survival depended on it. Lightning cracked overhead, briefly illuminating the cliff and the struggling human and dragon. The rain poured harder, but Kale's hands worked tirelessly, twisting leaves and mud to form barriers. One egg threatened to roll toward the edge. Kale lunged, catching it just in time. The dragon growled in warning, but he gently set the egg back in place. She lowered her head slightly, a sign of acknowledgement, and let him continue. By late afternoon, the nest was mostly protected. Water still dripped, but the majority of the flow had been diverted. Kale was soaked, shivering and exhausted, but he did not stop. He rearranged rocks, pressed mud into gaps and reinforced weak areas with branches. The dragon remained alert but calm, wings tucked closer as if she trusted him enough to stay nearby. Kale realized that trust had been earned in those hours, not by words but by action and care. Finally the rain began to ease. A soft drizzle replaced the pounding storm. Kale leaned against a rock, catching his breath, and looked at the nest. The eggs were safe for now, and the mother dragon nudged them with her snout, checking them carefully. She turned to Kale, eyes bright with gratitude. She let out a low, vibrating hum, almost like a sigh, and he smiled faintly. He scribbled on a small slate, "Safe for now." The dragon tilted her head, watching him closely as if she understood the message. Night fell, and Kale huddled under a partially repaired section of the nest, still keeping a watchful eye on the mother and her eggs. He had come seeking simple shelter from the storm, but instead he had found a life that needed his help, and he had stepped up. He felt a strange connection to the dragon, a silent acknowledgement that they were allies. The storm had been dangerous, but it had also brought them together. As the wind calmed and the last rain trickled down the cliff, Kale realized something important. He had saved the nest, yes, but he had also begun to form a bond. The dragon was no longer just a creature to fear. She was a partner, watching him, understanding his intentions. And Kale knew this was only the beginning. There would be more storms, more challenges, but together human and dragon had survived the first test. He closed his eyes briefly, listening to the soft breathing of the dragon and the steady drip of water. Silence settled over the cliff for the first time that day. Kale understood that survival was more than fixing a nest. It was about trust, courage, and the willingness to help even when fear threatened to take over. And tonight for the first time he felt that trust flowing both ways. The morning after the storm, the cliffside was quiet. Mist hovered over the rocks, and the air smelled fresh from rain. Kale stood near the dragon's nest, surveying the work he had done. The mother dragon, scales gleaming in the soft sunlight, watched him from a few meters away. She had allowed him near the eggs yesterday, a sign of cautious trust, but now it was time to repair more than just the damage from the storm. Kale retrieved tools from his satchel and examined the weakened nest walls. Some branches had split under the rain, and mud that held rocks in place had washed away. As he worked, he noticed the dragon observing him carefully. Every time he lifted a heavy rock, she shifted slightly, her eyes tracking his movements. He paused and scribbled on his slate, "Need help?" Then he held up a large branch. The dragon stepped closer, her tail brushing against a smaller rock, nudging it in the right direction. Kale realized she was cooperating, guiding him silently. Throughout the morning they worked together. Kale laid down new branches, reinforced weak spots with mud, and positioned rocks carefully. The dragon mirrored his actions, using her strength to hold large rocks in place or press mud into gaps with her snout. They moved as a team without words, understanding each other's intentions through gestures, glances, and subtle movements. Each small success built trust between them. During a break, Kale sat on a large boulder, wiping sweat and rain from his face. He noticed the dragon approaching slowly, head low, eyes soft. She nudged a small pile of twigs toward him. Kale realized she was offering him tools, or at least trying to participate in the work. He smiled faintly, taking a twig and showing her how to place it in a support structure. The dragon watched, then repeated the motion, slightly less precise but effective. Laughter bubbled up in Kale, even though no sound came from the dragon. He patted her neck gently, feeling the warmth of scales under his hand. As the day continued, Kale began to teach the dragon more subtle ways of helping. He pointed to gaps, motioned with his hands, and used simple tools to show how to secure weak spots. The dragon learned quickly, responding to gestures and eye contact. At first, she moved cautiously, unsure if she could trust him. But as Kale remained patient and careful, she became bolder, using her claws and wings to assist in ways he could not manage alone. By late afternoon, the nest had transformed. What had been a fragile, damaged shelter now stood strong, reinforced with branches, rocks, and hardened mud. The mother dragon inspected the work, moving around carefully, testing each section with gentle nudges. She let out a low rumble, a sound Kale understood as approval. He scribbled on his slate, "Strong. Say, ready." The dragon pressed her head lightly against his shoulder, and he realized the bond between them had grown deeper than the simple act of repairing a nest. Kale's confidence grew too. He understood the dragon's moods and intentions better. When she tilted her head, it meant curiosity or caution. When her tail flicked slowly, it was patience. Fast flicks or low growls warned of discomfort or danger. He began to anticipate her reactions, adjusting his movements accordingly. They were no longer separate beings working side by side. They were a team, communicating silently through understanding and observation. As evening approached, Kale explored the surrounding cliffs with the dragon following closely. They discovered smaller nests damaged by the storm and fallen branches that could serve as additional support. The dragon nudged Kale toward certain spots, clearly indicating what she wanted him to fix. He responded, moving rocks and branches, building small shelters where younger dragons could rest safely. Each action reinforced trust, and the dragon seemed to relax, her posture less tense than before. Kale realized something remarkable. The dragon was learning from him just as much as he was learning from her. She adapted to his gestures and he adapted to her instincts. Together they solved problems neither could have managed alone. When he stumbled on a slippery rock, she moved to block him, wings braced to stop a fall. When she struggled with lifting a heavy branch, he guided it into place carefully. The mutual support became natural, a rhythm of cooperation that required no words. By nightfall, the nest stood taller and sturdier than it had before the storm. Kale sat near the edge of the cliff, watching the dragon settle over her eggs, her eyes occasionally flicking to him. He scribbled one last note for the day, "We trust each other." The dragon responded with a soft hum and a gentle nudge. Kale understood that this was more than gratitude. It was acknowledgement. They had moved beyond fear, beyond survival, they had formed a bond. As stars appeared above, Kale and the dragon rested side by side. The cliff was quiet, except for the occasional wind and distant rumble of waves. Kale thought about the day, about how a simple act of helping had turned into partnership. The dragon had begun to see him as an ally, and he had learned to respect her intelligence, instincts, and strength. The night passed peacefully. Rain had stopped, leaving a clean, fresh scent in the air. Kale felt a sense of accomplishment, but more importantly, a sense of connection. He had fixed the nest, but he had also built trust, a bond that neither storm nor danger could easily break. And as he drifted into a light sleep under the watchful eyes of the dragon, he understood that this partnership was just the beginning. Together, human and dragon could face anything, side by side, bound by courage, respect, and mutual understanding. The morning sun rose over the cliff, casting golden light across the repaired dragon nest. Kale woke to the quiet flapping of wings. The mother dragon shifted over her eggs, eyes alert, scanning the cliffs and sky. Kale stretched, rubbing his stiff muscles, and noticed something unusual: faint tracks leading toward the nest from the lower paths. They were fresh, human-made, and moving quickly toward the cliffside. Kale's heart sank. He had hoped the storm and its aftermath would be their only challenge, but it seemed trouble had already found them. He moved closer to the dragon, keeping his voice low and calm, though he knew she would understand his tension. She growled softly, a warning low in her throat. Kale followed the tracks carefully, peering through binoculars. A small group of scavengers had arrived, hunters seeking rare dragon eggs for trade. The mother dragon's tail flicked rapidly. Kale could see the panic in her eyes. Her instincts screamed that the eggs were in danger. He scribbled quickly on his slate, "We protect. Together." She tilted her head, understanding the message. Kale grabbed a few tools from his satchel and began improvising defensive measures. Rocks, branches, and mud were all repurposed into barricades and traps. The dragon watched, then helped by nudging larger boulders into position with her snout. The scavengers climbed the cliff carefully, unaware of the preparations above. Kale signaled to the dragon, pointing to certain weak spots where they could gain leverage. She shifted, wings braced, ready to respond. The first intruder reached a narrow ledge and stepped onto a loose rock. Kale pulled a rope, releasing a small trap of rocks that tumbled toward the path. The intruder shouted, scrambling backward, while the dragon flared her wings, a warning that shook the ground. Kale and the dragon worked in perfect coordination. Every move he made, she mirrored, and every nudge or snap of her jaws added to the strategy. When one scavenger tried to climb directly toward the nest, the dragon lunged, blocking the path with her massive body. Kale signaled the other intruders, confusing them with clever placement of branches and loose stones. They stumbled, shouting, unsure how to proceed. The cliffside became a maze of obstacles, all designed to protect the eggs in the nest. One hunter tried to throw a rope to grab an egg, but Kale acted quickly, signaling the dragon. She extended a wing, knocking the rope aside and snapping her jaws near it. The hunter recoiled in fear. Kale felt his chest tighten. He had never seen humans so bold, yet so careless. The dragon, sensing the danger, turned to Kale, eyes bright and focused. He scribbled, "Stay calm. We finished this." As the confrontation continued, Kale realized they needed more than just obstacles. He ran to a nearby ledge and picked up wet branches, using them to make makeshift barriers that could slow the intruders even further. The dragon followed, helping him drag larger rocks into place. Together, they funneled the scavengers into a narrow area where they could do no harm to the nest. Kale noticed the hunters' frustration growing. They had expected easy eggs, not this fierce coordination between human and dragon. The mother dragon's presence was intimidating. Her wings stretched wide, casting shadows over the intruders, and her low hum reverberated through the cliff. Kale felt a surge of pride. They had trained, learned to trust, and now that trust was saving the nest. Every movement was deliberate, every action reinforcing their bond. The scavengers realized they were outmatched and began retreating, shouting curses and promises to return. Kale and the dragon stayed alert, ensuring the last hunter left safely without endangering the eggs. Once the cliffside was empty, Kale exhaled slowly. He checked the nest carefully. Every egg was intact, and the mother dragon shifted to settle over them, wings protective and relaxed. Kale scribbled on his slate, "Safe again. For now." She nudged him gently, a soft rumble vibrating through the air, a sign of gratitude and acknowledgement. The danger had passed, but Kale knew more challenges would come. The events had taught him something important. Strength alone was not enough. The bond he shared with the dragon, built on trust and understanding, had turned the odds in their favor. They had communicated without words, anticipated each other's actions, and acted as a single unit. Kale realized that courage, strategy, and empathy were as powerful as any weapon. By afternoon, Kale and the dragon began restoring the cliff around the nest, reinforcing weak areas that had been exposed during the confrontation. They worked efficiently, silent but coordinated, each movement purposeful. The mother dragon would occasionally nudge Kale or hold a branch in place, and he would follow her guidance, showing that their partnership was more than survival, it was teamwork. Kale found a moment to look out over the valley below. The hunters were gone, but the threat they represented lingered. He knew it would not be the last attempt on the eggs. Yet he felt confident. He and the dragon had proven they could handle danger, protect the nest and keep the family safe. Their bond was stronger now, forged in the heat of shared challenge. As the sun dipped behind distant mountains, Kale and the dragon settled near the nest. The cliff was calm, the eggs safe, and the air filled with the soft sound of dripping water. Kale scribbled a final note for the day, "We are ready. Together, nothing can break this bond." The dragon pressed her head gently against his shoulder, and Kale felt the quiet strength of their partnership. Tonight the cliff would be silent. But Kale knew that together human and dragon could face storms, intruders and whatever challenges the world would throw at them. They were no longer simply a man and a creature. They were allies, guardians and friends, united by trust, courage and a shared purpose that went beyond words. The morning sun filtered gently through the mist, casting soft light across the cliffside. Kale stretched his stiff limbs and looked over the dragon's nest. The eggs were safe, the structure secure, but he knew that protecting the nest went beyond simply repairing wood and rocks. The dragon family had survived the storm and the scavenger's threat, yet they still carried tension, subtle injuries and unease from the past days. Kale understood that his work was not just about shelter, it was about care. He approached the mother dragon slowly, hands raised to show no threat. She observed him cautiously, her eyes reflecting both trust and curiosity. Kale opened his satchel, pulling out bandages, herbs, and a small water container he had prepared. He knelt beside her, showing the tools and motioning gently toward a shallow scrape on her wing that had gone unnoticed. The dragon watched intently, lowering her head slightly, allowing him to begin. Kale worked carefully, cleaning the wound with water and applying a bandage reinforced with leaves. The dragon remained calm, occasionally flicking her tail as if to communicate her discomfort, but she did not move away. Kale whispered soft words and made gentle gestures, showing her that he meant no harm. Slowly the dragon's eyes softened. Trust had deepened. She allowed him access to areas that would have been impossible before. After tending to her, Kale turned his attention to smaller tasks. He gathered loose branches and mud, reinforcing areas of the nest that had been weakened during the previous day's fight with the scavengers. While he worked, the dragon hovered nearby, nudging him occasionally with her snout, offering a branch or guiding him to a particular spot. Kale laughed quietly, realizing that she had learned ways to assist him as much as he had learned to help her. They had become a team not only in defense but in daily life and repair. Kale noticed the younger dragons, still small but curious, peeking from behind their mother's protective wings. Their scales shimmered faintly in the sunlight, delicate but strong. He approached slowly, extending his hands to show friendliness. The hatchlings sniffed and touched his fingers tentatively. He smiled, offering them water and soft leaves to nibble. They chirped and nudged him in response, and he understood that care could extend beyond repairs. It could teach patience, respect, and calm in a world that often demanded fear and caution. By midday, Kale had attended to minor scrapes on the smaller dragons, cleaned mud from their scales and reinforced the nest further. The mother dragon settled comfortably over her young, occasionally lifting her head to glance at him with an approving hum. Kale scribbled on his slate, "Better. Safe. Strong." The dragon nudged his shoulder gently, acknowledging the message. It was more than gratitude. It was understanding, recognition that he was part of their world now. As the afternoon progressed, Kale explored the cliffside with the dragon, collecting materials for further improvements. They found fallen branches, patches of strong mud, and rocks that could serve as additional barriers for the nest. The mother dragon helped by nudging large rocks and shifting debris, while Kale guided her with hand signals and gestures. Together they worked efficiently, silently communicating and reinforcing their bond. During a brief rest, Kale observed the dragons closely. He noticed signs of lingering fear, small flinches when the wind shifted suddenly, tense muscles when branches snapped under their weight. He realized that healing was more than treating wounds, it was about rebuilding confidence and comfort. He moved carefully, making soft humming sounds and slow movements, showing patience and reassurance. Gradually, the dragons relaxed, stretching their wings fully and exploring the nest with curiosity rather than caution. Kale reflected on the day's work. Protecting the nest had been important, but nurturing the dragon's well-being was equally vital. He had repaired structures, tended wounds, and offered care, yet what mattered most was the trust he had earned. The dragons now approached him willingly, seeking guidance, support, and comfort. The bond they shared had grown stronger through every challenge, every shared task, and every act of gentle care. By evening, the nest was transformed, not only structurally but emotionally. The dragons moved confidently, the mother proud and relaxed, the hatchlings playful and curious. Kale sat nearby, observing them with quiet satisfaction. He realized that his presence had changed more than the nest. It had changed the dragon's sense of safety and security. They trusted him completely, and he understood their moods, intentions, and needs without words. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting warm light over the cliff. The wind was calm, and the air carried the scent of fresh rain. Kale gathered his tools, cleaning and storing them carefully. He sat beside the mother dragon, feeling the warmth of her scales and the steady rhythm of her breathing. The hatchlings nestled close, chirping softly. Kale smiled, knowing that he had done more than fix a home. He had healed a family, strengthened their bond, and shown that care and understanding could bridge species. As darkness settled, Kale watched the stars begin to shine. The cliff was quiet, but alive with trust and connection. He felt a sense of purpose and fulfillment unlike anything he had known. By helping the dragons, he had learned patience, empathy, and courage. By guiding them and caring for them, he had become part of their lives. And for the dragons, Kale's presence had become more than a helper. It was a source of comfort, protection, and companionship. The night passed peacefully. Kale knew challenges would come again, storms, threats, and unknown dangers. Yet he was no longer alone, and neither were the dragons. Together they had healed more than a nest. They had healed hearts, built trust, and created a bond that would endure. And as Kale drifted into sleep beside the dragons, he felt a quiet certainty. Kindness, courage, and understanding could transform even the wildest lives, one small act at a time. The morning sun broke through the clouds, casting warm light across the cliff. Kale woke to the quiet sounds of the dragon family moving in the nest. The mother dragon stretched her wings, and the hatchlings chirped softly, exploring the reinforced shelter. The nest had survived storms, threats, and countless challenges, but today it felt alive with calm and safety. Kale stood, stretching sore muscles, and looked over the work they had accomplished. The home they had built together was more than a nest. It was a place of trust and life. Kale began his morning rounds, checking every corner of the nest. The rocks were firmly in place, the branches strong, and the mud hardened to withstand future storms. The mother dragon watched him with bright eyes, her posture relaxed. She nudged a small rock into place herself, as if to show pride in the home they had recreated together. Kale laughed softly and patted her snout, feeling the bond that had grown over days of shared work and danger. He turned his attention to the hatchlings, who tumbled over each other in playful curiosity. They had grown bolder since the first day he arrived, now confident in the safety of their home. Kale offered them soft leaves to chew and small pebbles to explore, encouraging their instincts. The mother dragon observed, her eyes warm and approving, occasionally nudging Kale to guide his attention where it was needed. Together, they ensured the young dragons learned both play and caution, preparing them for the challenges of the world. By midday, Kale explored the cliffside further, checking for weak spots and potential hazards. The mother dragon followed closely, wings tucked neatly against her body, her gaze scanning the horizon for any sign of trouble. They collected strong branches from nearby trees and rocks that could serve as additional supports for the nest. Every task was a silent partnership. Kale worked carefully, and the dragon assisted instinctively, guiding, nudging, and adjusting as needed. As the sun reached its peak, Kale paused to rest. The mother dragon settled over her young, shielding them from the sun, while Kale admired the view. From this height, the valley below stretched endlessly, peaceful and untouched. The storm that had first brought him here seemed a distant memory. Now, every branch, every rock, and every patch of mud told the story of survival, teamwork, and trust. Suddenly, a shadow passed overhead. Kale's hand went instinctively to the rock at his side, but the mother dragon only lifted her head and flapped her wings slightly. A large bird circled above, curious but harmless. Kale laughed softly. He realized the dragons had learned too. They could assess threats without panic, confident in the safety of their home and the protection they shared. By afternoon, Kale and the dragon had finished reinforcing the nest. He had dug small drainage channels to divert future rain, arranged rocks to prevent slipping, and secured weak branches with mud. The mother dragon tested each section with her snout and claws, approving each adjustment. Even the hatchlings joined in, nudging small pebbles and exploring the safety of their remade home. Kale watched, heart swelling, realizing that the nest was more than shelter. It was life, nurtured and protected by shared care. As evening approached, Kale sat near the edge of the cliff, watching the dragon family settle comfortably in the nest. The mother curled protectively around her young, eyes bright and watchful but relaxed. The hatchlings chirped softly, exploring and learning, while Kale felt a deep sense of accomplishment. They were safe, they were together, and they were thriving. The home they had rebuilt was a symbol of survival, trust, and partnership between human and dragon. Kale pulled out his slate and wrote a simple note: home. Safe. Together. He showed it to the mother dragon. She pressed her head gently against his shoulder, a quiet acknowledgement of the message. No words were needed. They had built more than a nest, they had built a bond, strong and enduring. Night fell and stars twinkled above the cliff. The wind was calm and the air smelled of fresh earth and rain. Kale lay down near the nest, watching the dragon sleep peacefully. He reflected on everything that had happened: the storm, the scavengers, the repairs, the fear, and the trust. Every challenge had strengthened their connection, turning strangers into allies, and a fragile shelter into a safe home. As Kale drifted into sleep, the mother dragon nudged him softly one last time, pressing close to show protection and acceptance. The hatchlings nestled under her wings, chirping softly, and the cliff was quiet, alive with the gentle rhythm of life and safety. Kale realized that home was not just a structure, it was trust, care, and connection. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, storms, and perhaps new threats, but Kale knew they were ready. Together they had faced fear, built safety, and healed more than shelter. They had healed hearts, nurtured trust, and created a family that could face anything. And as the night deepened, the cliff stood quiet and secure, the remade home a testament to courage, care, and the unspoken bond between human and dragon.